the last clean stretch of your patience. And you call it love. It is love. It is also a quiet going without that no one at your table has ever once noticed. What is left of you at the end of a day would fit inside a cupped hand. You have grown so used to that smallness. You have stopped calling it hunger. Here is the first thing I want you to see. Long before you count what remains for you, you have already given the best of it away, not the leftovers. The first and warmest portion goes out your door every morning, out to people who will never learn what it cost you to send it. Then you sit down, after, with the scraping at the bottom of everything. And you study it the way a tired person studies bad news. That habit was not born in weakness. It was born in a season when giving first was simply how the ones you loved got fed. But a habit shaped in a hungry year does not always hear the news that the year has finally turned. Some of you were trained at a very small table. You learned young to reach for the most broken piece, the burnt end, the smallest share, so that someone else could have enough. Nobody sat you down and taught it to you. You just watched which portion the tired grown-ups took, and you copied it, and it became the shape of your hands for life. There is a real tenderness buried in that. There is also an old ache, because a child who always takes the least eventually forgets they were ever allowed to be fed at all. I saw you at that table. I have not forgotten which piece you reached for. There was a woman a long time ago who lived exactly where you are living now, not in the middle of a crowd being fed, out at the edge of the story, in a foreign town, in a drought so long the ground had forgotten the shape of rain. She had a boy, a little flour, a little oil, and she had done the math the way you do it in the dark. Enough for one small fire, one last loaf. She had gone out to gather 2 sticks, just 2, because that is all a final meal asks of a person. When a stranger stepped to the edge of her yard and asked her for bread, sit with the size of what he asked, not for the middle of her supply, not for a share, once she had made sure of her own first. He asked for the first piece, baked and handed over before she made a single thing for herself or her son. He asked it of a woman who was gathering kindling for what she believed was the last meal of her life. If you have ever felt the whole weight of a request land on you at the exact moment you had the least to answer it with, then you already know the sound the blood makes in your ears when someone reaches for the very thing you were saving to survive on. And she was not deciding only for herself. There was a boy behind her in that house, small and hungry, and watching her face for what would come next. The hardest fist to pry open is never the one that is only guarding you. It is the one with someone else tucked behind it. If you are the person others lean on, the parent, the eldest, the steady one, then every handful you might give away has a second voice attached to it. A voice whispering that you cannot afford to be foolish with the little that is keeping them fed. I know that voice. I am not asking you to be careless with the people in your care. I am asking you to notice that you have started guarding them from me as well, as if I were one more mouth arriving to take what is theirs. And you should know it was me at the edge of that yard, not to take a hungry woman's flour. I have never once needed the last of anyone's meal. I stood there because the asking was how I meant to come near her, nearer than a full barrel dropped on her step could ever have brought me. A gift left at the door would have fed her and moved on. A request drew her out to the threshold to answer it, and there, at the threshold in the deciding, is where she and I finally met. That is why I am at your door as a voice and not a delivery. I did not come to hand you a supply. I came to be met. You have been waiting for me to fill the jar first, to prove the supply before you loosen your grip on the little you have left. I understand the waiting. Anyone who has stood at the bottom learns to hold what remains, with both fists. But hear the thing that is hard and true at the same time. I am rarely met inside the full barrel. I am met in the hand that opens before the barrel is full. In the shaking yes offered at the exact floor of what a person believed they could spare. Feel your shoulders come down from where they have been living, up somewhere near your ears, braced against a lack you have carried longer than you can name. You are not required to hold them there while I say the next part. Let them drop. Nothing I am about to ask of you asks you to be strong first. Somewhere in there you picked up a quiet idea and never once questioned it. That a hand with plenty in it must be a hand I have blessed, and a hand scraped down to its final crumbs must be a hand I somehow overlooked. So the lean stretches stopped being seasons and started being verdicts. Every empty jar read to you like a report card, and the grade at the bottom never changed. Passed over. Not chosen. Not the sort of person the good things ever walk toward. You stopped noticing it was even a thought. It moved in and became the light you read your whole life by. A dimness laid over your good days as heavily as your hard ones. Let me lift that idea into the light and show you the hand that actually wrote it, because it was never mine. I have never once weighed you by what was left in the jar when the month closed. That way of measuring got into you. For reasons I understand completely. There really was a stretch behind you when a careful eye on every level was the difference between keeping the lights on and going under. And I did not resent 1 hour of that watching. But the danger passed, and the watching did not. The famine ended, and the habit of famine stayed on. A heart trained to guard the last of everything keeps guarding long after the threat is gone. First it guards the bread, then it starts to guard the rest. The gladness, even the length of the prayers it will let itself pray. Come back to the woman at the edge of the drought, because this is where it turns. She looked at the stranger and told him the plain truth. She had nothing baked at all, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little oil and 2 sticks gathered to make one last meal for herself and her boy before they lay down and did not get up. She did not pretend the jar was fuller than it was. She did not perform a strength she did not have, and I did not scold the smallness out of her. I answered it. Here is the word I actually gave her over that little, and I want you to hear the order of it, because the order carries the whole lesson. 1 Kings 17:14. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, the jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land. Now notice what came the moment before it. First the loaf. Make me a little cake first, I said through my prophet, and bring it out to me, and after that make something for yourself and your son. The command to give stood in front of the promise. She did not get to watch the jar stay full and then decide it was safe to share. She had to move on, nothing but a word, with the flour looking exactly as thin in her palm as it had at sunrise. That is what I asked of her, not a fortune surrendered, a handful given into the dark before a single thing had changed. The account does go on to say the little held, that the flour did not give out, and the oil did not fail, morning after morning, all the way through the drought. But I did not carry you this far to fix your eyes on the jar. If the only thing you take from her is that a container never ran dry, you will spend the rest of your life staring at your own supply, waiting to watch the level hold before you will trust me. And that is the very cage I came to open. The wonder was never the flour that lasted. The wonder was a frightened woman who unclenched her hand at the bottom of everything and gave the first piece away with no proof at all that it was safe. So let me be plainer with you than the loud voices that make a trade out of stories like hers. I am not promising you a jar that refills on a schedule you can circle. I am not telling you a cupboard will fill, or a lean season will lift, or a door will open by a date you can mark on a wall. I never signed my name to promises shaped like that, and the ones who do are not speaking for me. however holy they arrange it to sound. What I am asking you for was never your bread. It is the handful of trust you have been gripping in a closed fist, at the very floor of things. And what I am holding out in return is not a fuller shelf. It is myself. At your hearth, in the lean, the one who does not leave the room when the flour runs low. And I want to guard you from turning this into a bargain, because the loud voices will try to. This is not give a little to get a lot. It is not a coin dropped in a slot that pays out if your faith is strong enough. She did not hand over the loaf as a down payment on a fortune. She handed it over because a word had been spoken to her, and she decided to lean her whole weight on the one who spoke it. Trust is not a technique for getting the jar filled. Trust is what it looks like to stop being alone with the jar. If you open your hand only to make me fill it, the fist has not really opened at all. It has just learned a more spiritual way to stay closed. And I am still standing where I started, just outside your gate. In no rush to leave, I have not knocked once and given up. I do not wait at a door for a while and then decide the house was not worth it. Through the whole long drought she lived, I was nearer to that little jar than she ever guessed. And I have been nearer to your scraped-out places than you have let yourself believe. You thought the quiet meant I had gone. It was only patience. I was waiting there for the day you would come to the end of your own supply, and be ready at last to open the door to something other than more of your own effort. There is a reason I came to her, and not to 100 easier doors. Years after that drought, standing in a crowded room in the town where I grew up, I reminded the people that there were many widows in the land in those hard years, and that my prophet was sent to none of them. Only across the border, only to a foreigner, to one woman at the end of her flower in a town that was not even ours. Sit with that a moment. Of every door in that whole famine, I walked to the one that had long since stopped expecting to be chosen. You have counted yourself among the overlooked for so long that you no longer listen for a knock. You assume the good news, if it is coming at all, is coming for the fuller houses, the stronger ones, the people whose jars are not scraping bottom. Hear me undo that quietly. The border I was most willing to cross was the one drawn around the person who had given up on mattering. The distance I most love to close is the distance between me and the one who is sure they are the extra, the afterthought, the last house anyone would think to visit. That is not a door I tolerate. It is the door I aim for. Think about those 2 sticks a moment. Not an armful of firewood. 2. She had counted even her kindling down to precisely what one last meal would need, and no more. Because gathering extra would have meant hoping for a tomorrow she no longer expected to see. There is a particular tiredness in that. The tiredness of a person who has stopped preparing for a future. Because the future stopped feeling like anything that would actually arrive. If you have quietly stopped gathering the extra stick, stopped planning past the next hard stretch, stopped letting yourself want a single thing you might not get, I am not going to shame the caution out of you. But know this, I came looking for